Hello, everyone. My name is Rafal, and I would like to welcome everyone into my Headshot Photography podcast. Today, I have special guest John Gress. We've been talking for the last few days, and we've decided to do this very quickly. Sometimes it takes months to get people on the show, but with you, it was just like super quick. You are an amazing photographer. I've been following you for many, many years. You also are educator. Your work is absolutely stunning. So thank you
Thank you.
for accepting my invitation. I want to dive into your photography world. We talked a little bit prior. We got live, and the interesting thing, we've met once. You don't remember, but that's okay. It's a little bit of kind of the joke side. But as I said, like, your work is absolutely amazing, and I want to kind of unpack some of those cool stuff. And then I have tons of questions to you. So hopefully we'll be able to go through all of this. But first of all, thank you for joining me. And I'm really looking forward to chat to you today.
Yeah, me too. It's great to see you again, especially since the first time we only got a few minutes in the hallway at a convention
Yes,
center. So
absolutely. And
this
we
will
were
be
all
fun.
running like crazy there. So I know, it was a tough time to even sit down and have some decent conversation. Um, okay, so let me start with the kind of basic question. I want to learn a little bit more about how did you get into photography industry, because I know from my own experience, and then the people I'm talking to, everyone has kind of own story, and sometimes it's interesting path. Where people just navigate their life, and all of a sudden they find this passion, and they find this desire to be photographer, and they dedicated their life to this industry, and then to photography. So tell me a little bit, how was your path into this whole thing, and how this whole thing started, and then we'll talk more about how this whole thing evolved over the years.
Yeah, so growing up, I was sort of an unpopular kid who was bullied, and I borrowed my mom's camera, a Vivitar point and shoot, when I went to summer camp. And I realized that if I went to take pictures of people, it gave me a reason to talk to people and make friends with these new kids that I'd never met before. So I kind of realized that I was into photography, and then took a class when I was a freshman in high school, and then very quickly sort of decided that I wanted to be a photojournalist. And so I worked
Wow.
towards that goal the whole time through high school, and through college. I had some. My high school photography teacher was a freelancer for the Associated Press, and so he introduced me to the staff photographers there in Portland, where I grew up, and they sort of became my mentors. And I worked for them throughout college, and then after college, I went to go work at a newspaper,
Oh, wow.
and I went back to working for the Associated Press and doing that almost full time. And then in 2003, I moved to Chicago, where I live now, to
Wow.
be to work as a full time contractor for Reuters, which is another large global news organization. And
Okay.
so over the next almost maybe 8 or 10 years, I photographed all sorts of big events that happened in the US. I even went to
Oh, wow.
Canada one time for the Grand Prix du Canada,
No, nice.
and I photographed presidential elections and the World Series and the Stanley Cup and all sorts of things.
Wow.
And that at the same time, I was working as a commercial photographer and sort
Mhm.
of um, rising up doing that. And eventually, journalism sort of died off during that 2008
Mhm.
to 2010 recession,
Wow.
because the
Mhm.
clients of Reuters had a lot less money to spend. So then Reuters had a lot less money to spend. And so then I needed to go and do something else, sort of. So I guess I made that sound a little too drastic. So what was happening in that 2008 to 2012 period was that Reuters was spending less money, and my commercial things were on the rise too. And so then I just ended up having those two things pass like ships in the night. And then I became
Wow.
a commercial photographer mostly, instead of a photojournalist. And now there's really no more journalism that I do.
Mhm.
And then around 2019, give or take, I started making another transition into my third career as a photographer. And so then I started educating other photographers about lighting and that sort of thing with photography. And so now that's become a majority of what I do. So I kind of joke that I'm on my third career as a
Mhm.
photographer. And we always of adapt and we never know where we're going. As long as we're enjoying what we're doing and having fun, then
Absolutely.
do it.
Well, I think all of us going for similar process. We have to start transitioning for like one thing to another, but we still want to hold on to this industry. I have went for exactly the same process. Like as I mentioned before, I was wedding photographer and then just like went to the portraiture and headshots, but I didn't want to leave it. This whole thing that was the
Yeah.
scary part. And then I think we always fighting, what we should do. And as you probably also experienced, that photography industry is not easy to be in, right? It takes a lot of courage, a hell of a work, because people don't realize sometimes. So tell me, the next question I have for you, tell me about getting into the portraiture, because like photojournalism is a little bit a different thing, right? And then you transition into the portraiture, and very high end portraiture. How does transition look like for you? Like, was it easy? Like, you kind of know which direction you want to go, or also it was something hit and miss and you were just trying different things and decided at some point, okay, I'm going to go into this genre of photography?
So in journalism, there were always times where you needed to take portraits of people,
Okay.
and I would see sort of what the other photographers were doing and kind of want to do kind of the same thing. And so um, they were using monolights and soft boxes and all
Mhm.
sorts of different modifiers in order to photograph people. And so around 1999, I got my first set of lights. They
Mhm.
released White Lightning 10,000s, which are the most basic lights that you can imagine, far more basic than anything Godox makes today, for instance. And I was using I sort of started using those and transitioning from using speedlights to using those. And then I ended up with white lightnings, other white lightnings, and I got more and more and more lights. And I just kept photographing those people in the news and sort of practicing while I was shooting. And I never did any practicing outside of those paid shoots until about 2008, when a friend said that he wanted me to teach him lighting because he wanted to be a fashion photographer. And so we started off, and on our first night that I was teaching him stuff, I was the model and he was the photographer. I
Mhm.
was very much an unwilling participant, but we eventually found some people that wanted to have their photos taken, and I kept teaching him things. And maybe around the fifth or so shoot, he was like, I don't want to know all this technical stuff. Like, that's what you need to know for your photojournalism job. I just want to feel the pictures. And
Mhm.
I think I want to go to Paris to find myself.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, that was I don't know. I don't think that worked out well for him in the end. I sort of the end of our friendship too. There was no drama or anything.
Yeah, yeah.
But then I realized that I sort of found myself because I like photographing people that would actually, like models or actors, who would sit there and let me perfect things, whereas the business people or more famous people that I was shooting before, they just wanted you to provide do a 5-minute drive-by shooting and let them go. So so I really loved it. I feel like I found myself because I got to play and experiment and try out
Mhm.
new things. And so from about 2008 into 2010 or 11, during that economic downturn that we had, I would do 2 photo shoots a week. I would spend multiple days culling and retouching, and I would just learn from those model shoots. And I might
Mhm.
even line up multiple people on the same day. And I started doing collaborations or play dates with
Mhm.
stylists and makeup artists. And it was just a lot of fun, and there was a lot of growth. And so even though my skills went up really quickly when I started with lighting there in 99, um, in the mid 2000s, it just sort of fell off because I wasn't, my growth fell off because I was just coasting, doing what the
Mhm.
other photojournalists were doing the same level of work that they were doing, and I wasn't really pushing myself. And then during that period of time, from 2008 on, I started pushing myself a lot, and so my skills really started to go up during that period of time,
Mhm.
and I got a lot better. And that sort of led into me at the same time, like video in our cameras became a thing. So then I
Mhm.
started learning how to light for video using lights that didn't dim, and that was a whole setup, but I sort of got away from developing my lighting skills as a photographer, photographing portraits, until I got on Instagram in about
Mhm.
2015. And when I started doing that, I ran out of content pretty quickly, so I had to start practicing again. And so, thankfully, my friend Jeff Haynes is the one who pushed me into getting onto Instagram, and that sort of changed things a lot for me
Mhm.
because I think I got into the idea of, let me see what content does well. So then
Mhm.
I noticed, oh, if I shoot and I post a behind the scenes photo with my final photo, that does really well and gets a lot of attention. And maybe if I get more followers or subscribers, followers on Instagram,
Mhm.
then I'll end up with more business. So let
Mhm.
me do that. So let me try to get the most attention possible. And little did I know that I would end up with a lot of photographers following me. I guess I was a little naive. And that sort of led me into becoming an educator of photographers because people
Mhm.
kept asking me, hey, would you show me how to do this? Would you teach a workshop? And at first I was like,
Mhm.
I don't know if I want to do this because I don't want to rip anyone off. I don't want to be bad at it and take their money and not deliver value.
Mhm.
And then eventually I got asked to speak at Imaging USA. And I thought, oh, where we met. And I was like, oh, well, I better hurry up and start teaching these workshops because I want to practice before I teach in front of a
Mhm.
large audience because I
True.
don't want
Yeah.
to look like a complete idiot. So
Mhm.
so that got me off my butt into teaching these workshops, and it's something that I still do today. So for instance, in a few weeks I'll be in Orlando on November
Mhm.
3rd, and then I'll be back in my studio on the 15th and 17th or something
Mhm.
like that. It's a weekend in November to teach a 2-day advanced lighting workshop, and I'll also be in New York on October 26th, and then in Charlotte on March 22nd.
Oh wow.
And I'll probably also add Las Vegas in um, April to June,
Sure.
somewhere in there. And I'll probably also add some a Southern California stop in there somewhere.
Oh,
But I and
perfect.
Dallas, and I need to get on that. But
We will link all
um,
this stuff to this
yeah,
podcast so people can check it out. And then whoever is interested, and I highly recommend it because your lighting is stunning,
thank you.
and you know exactly. And like I've been watching also your YouTube videos where you talk about lighting, and I know you're so particular about the angles, like the technicalities behind, like exactly what you're going after. So let me ask you this. I want to talk a little bit more about your creative process because it seems like all your images, they really thought through. Like well, based on what I see is there's no guessing, there's no like trying. Well, I'm sure there's trying, but you know exactly what you're going after. So, and also what I've noticed is that you work with all sorts of different ideas because you're shooting headshots, you shooting full body portraits, 3/4 ones in different lighting settings, different concepts. Tell me a little bit about your creative process. Like, do you have kind of idea first and then you try to execute it, or you have some kind of general idea and then you're trying to kind of navigate it to get best out of it? How does process look like for you?
So a lot of times, well, there are particular things that I teach in all of my workshops, and I'm
Mhm.
seeing a lot of those setups as we go through here. That these are things that I sort of um, developed over time that I like doing, and I can tell people like learning how to do, and so I do those a lot. And
Mhm.
then there are other things that I do for commercial clients, like this one, where I just sort of had to come up with an idea of how I could execute. Um, 5 to 8 different lighting setups in 10 minutes and how I could
Oh, wow. Okay.
transition between them and come up with ideas to make this whole catalog of pictures around a player
Mhm.
and then repeat it and do it with the next player and do that
Mhm.
in the case of this football shoot 40 times in the same day.
Oh, wow.
So there are little things like that where it's more like I think about all the things that I need to get done during the shoot
Mhm.
and how I can best execute those in a it's not a formula, a workflow in a
Mhm.
workflow. So that's something. The biggest place though where I grow probably is I will be on Instagram myself and I will see things that catch my eye and I'll bookmark them. And then
Hmm.
I'll just start making a mood board that's maybe it's high contrast black and white images, for instance,
Hmm.
though, for that mood board. And I will go through if I see some lighting setup that I really like, I will just straight up like completely recreate it because I learned from that process of just figuring out how to technically do things and then always sort of end up putting my own spin on it through that
Hmm.
process and maybe just mastering that new skill and then maybe drawing from it later to use it for something else. So in this situation, I don't remember what gave me the idea of doing those three
Okay.
lights in the background like that. I'm sure it has to, well, I know that it has to do with the idea that at the boxing ring, there usually are those low hanging lights in the background.
Yeah.
So I sort of thought, like, well, how can I make a scene like that? And then, of course, I just happened to have these barn door sets that I got. So then
Mhm.
that led to that pretty naturally. Earlier, you had up a picture that I took where I was dragging the flash for quite a while using
This one?
continuous LEDs. It's a little higher. Um, oh, well, that we should come back to too.
Yeah, we'll come back
Um,
to it. Which one?
yeah, keep going up a little bit more. It's a ghostly looking image. There it is, top
Oh, okay.
center.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this one, I know that I saw. I hate reels for this reason. I just want to show you the photo.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Take your
yeah,
time.
so I got this idea from looking at a series of other photos that I saw during a critique I was actually giving at WPPI of someone's work, and a lot of it involved continuous light and drag flash, um, where they used a long exposure. In this case, I think it was about a quarter of a second, and they used a continuous colored light to sort of
Mhm.
burn that image into the film, so to
Okay.
speak,
Yeah.
um, and then moved the camera and had the flash fire, which then created another image of the person, and that also got recorded. So it was just like going through that process, seeing the final image, and then thinking like, well, how can I do this thing? And then also thinking about it myself, like, well, what colors am I going to choose? So I would look at the person and their clothing. Potential most of the time, that's what I'll be doing, and I'll sort of use that to be an element in the color harmony. And maybe I would go to a color harmony calculator and sort of say like, pick one color. So maybe in this instance, I would have picked blue. And
Mhm.
then maybe also on the color wheel, somehow I would have gotten into cyan, yellow, and red potentially. And because those would have been harmonious colors, and then I would use that for the shot in particular. So sometimes it's just things like that, like taking the general idea that I see somebody
Mhm.
using and then adapting it my own way based on what is in front of me. That other photo that we had there of the golfer, that actually is my
Mhm.
friend Jeff, the one who got me onto Instagram. It's his son's senior portrait, and he had this idea that he
Okay.
saw someone else using LED lights on things to make this streak. And so then it was just figuring out how to technically execute that. So
Mhm.
the XF data might be in here, but I think this was a 2.5 second exposure or something.
Okay.
Um, where
Yeah. 2 seconds.
yeah, so we were had to black out the entire studio, had to figure out first what the exposures would be for to get the LEDs exactly right, and then we had to figure out how to create, dramatic lighting on him, add in those gelled kickers as well to create some more drama, and just figuring out the right timing for like when I needed to count down for him to start swinging and where
Mhm.
in there I needed to push the button so that I captured the entire swing and then didn't have too much residual on the end. Because what would happen is at the top of the swing, he would end up sort of wobbling a little bit, and that would
Mhm.
create its own
Great.
lines that you didn't want. So
Yeah.
it was just really about timing and making sure that we recorded everything. So it was just a lot of fun problem solving on this shoot.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, it looks like you put a lot of effort to not only get this done right, but also understand the process. Because as we talked before, sometimes it looks like it's easy shot to do, but then when you start executing, there's all sorts of different challenges you have to go through. So let's kind of dive in a little bit more into your lighting, because as I said, like you really particular. So are you using all sorts of different lights, or you have some kind of like a concepts where like this is what I want to go after? Because I'm guessing you're using LED constant lighting nowadays, right? That's what you're using most, or you just mixing them all over the place? Depends on the idea you have, how this whole thing works.
So I'm probably using Flash about 70%
Okay.
or more of the time. Mm,
Hmm.
yeah, I think it's actually might be higher, but it sort of depends. Like if I'm doing things with a lot of colors, then using these Pavo tubes that I have from Nanlite can
Okay.
be pretty expedient way to work. But then other times, maybe um, the limitation is if I had six of them, I might use them more, but I have four of them.
Hmm.
And because of that, I usually use two of them together in one
Hmm.
location. So now if I want a colored hair light and I want two colored edge lights, I don't really have that capacity. So I might be more inclined to use flash. Um, a lot of the reason why I'm hesitating at the moment is that when the new Canon R5 Mark II came out a few months ago, a
Hmm.
lot of the talk there was about there being more limited dynamic range in compared to the older camera. Not very much, but a slight difference.
Hmm.
Um, and then testing that, and then I also learned through that process that the higher ISO you go to, the less dynamic range you get. But then I sort of had to grapple with the idea that we're not really we're capturing 12 stops of dynamic range, but our monitors only show 8 to 10, and so
Hmm.
we're not even seeing all of this dynamic range that theoretically exists. We're just kind of using it to recover highlights or shadows.
Hmm.
And a lot of times when lighting things, we're lighting and I'm lighting and I'm tethering and I'm looking at the results and I'm gauging what I need to do to perfect the image based on what I see. So it's not that I'm looking at it and going like, oh, the shadows are black, we'll fix it in post. I'm looking at it and going, well, the shadows are black, let me add a light. So I'm usually lighting to get the dynamic range that I see on the monitor.
Hmm.
um, so all of this theoretical dynamic range doesn't matter as much. But I guess what I'm saying all this to say is that with higher ISOs, which might be common with using continuous lights, you are going to get less dynamic range and there's going to be more noise and potentially lower quality and more shots that are blurry. Um, so Flash still has a place because it's superior in those instances, but sometimes just the ease of use with continuous is is a nice thing to have.
Hmm.
And particularly the ability with Flash to freeze movement, like the dancers that you see there in the middle right.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I guess there's a good example. So I'm using Flash here to freeze the dancers perfectly, even when there was a lot of movement,
Hmm.
because I'm using these short burst of light from the Flash in order to freeze them. Whereas if you go back three clicks backwards, three posts back, sorry, top right corner, there, top right, the other side. Um, yeah, there, you're
This one, this
hovering
one.
over it. The guy with the football. Yeah, I should
Oh,
have
okay.
said that. The guy with the football. There, I'm using four Pavo tubes. So two in the
Okay.
back with orange on him, and two in the front with blue.
Hmm.
So, just completely ease of use there because I don't have to gel anything. I just have to
Yeah.
tune the right color on the Pavo tubes, and it just
Yeah.
makes it uh, really simple and easy. So there was a long answer. Um, but
Yeah. No, no.
But yeah,
It's
it's all the above, and here's why.
Yeah, and it seems like you just going all sorts of different directions. Like that's what amazes me about your work. you just keep experimenting and you just pushing the boundaries further and further, and you're getting more and more interesting results. So let's switch the gears a little bit, and I want to talk a little bit more about connecting with your subject, because it looks that all your images, you have this amazing connection with your subject, and it seems like you're doing all sorts of different technical things throughout a photo shoot. How you connect with your subject, like how does the process look like, how long your sessions takes, because I'm guessing with all those experimenting and then trying different things, it's not 10 minutes session. I'm guessing it's a little bit longer than that. So tell me about working with your subject, how you interact with them, how you getting the best out of them. What's the process there? Because this is something also which really interests me, because all these technicalities, I know it's an extremely important element and we need to kind of get this right. But at the same time, if we're not going to get the face expression, we're not going to get the pose, the body language, and all sorts of stuff, the image, has no message. There's no feelings towards it. So tell me a little bit about your process, and how you deal and how you work with your subjects.
Have you ever seen that show, Dr. Pimple Popper on I
No,
think
no, I
it's
didn't.
on
No.
okay, so this show is a dermatologist
Okay.
who does all these gross things in order to like take care of zits and cysts and other things on camera.
Okay.
And she says in there that she practices talkesthesia, which means she's usually just talking to someone, distracting them about something, and they're talking about that subject, and then she does something really painful to them where they're not expecting it. So,
Okay.
um, rather than giving them a lot of drugs, she's just talking to them, and then all of a sudden, like, bam, and then it's over.
Okay.
So, and that's a bad analogy for me to say that's what my photo shoots are like. But mostly, I'm just trying to talk to the subject constantly in order to find out about them and make them feel at ease and learn about their life. And then in the middle of that, I'm problem solving, and I'm also trying to um, share with them what's going on and tell them, you know, why it is I'm moving this thing, or why it is I'm perplexed about, and showing them the pictures in real time. And that would be more like when I'm working with a model and I'm doing a lot of intricate things and a lot of problem solving. And I'll kind of like almost be teaching them what I'm doing in real time. But
Okay.
it's like, I want them to know, like in this situation, like, okay, well, I have these two lights over here with blue gels on them. Like, why am I doing that? Well, I'm
Mhm.
doing that because I'm trying to light the background to be blue, so it's the same tonality as the suit. And then everything in the scene will be blue except for the person, and then they'll pop in the picture. So I might be saying like,
Mhm.
we're I might just explain to him why I have these two lights over here and what they're doing and why I'm dialing them in or making sure they're at a correct angle. Or maybe I'll explain here in this situation, like, oh, I've got to really work precisely on the positioning of this light that I've got over here, the main light, because I want to make sure that it gets under your hat and then both your eyes are illuminated. So I'm
Mhm.
just kind of letting them know the whole time where I'm going and what I'm thinking about. And also, I try not to I try to let people pose and try different things and experiment and then correct things if I see that they're going a little bit wrong. Or I will pose them like a mannequin if I can tell that they're really nervous and just bad at
Mhm.
posing overall.
Mhm.
But I am kind of just letting them go. And then maybe also a lot of those corrections I'll make sometimes are related to making sure that they look their best. So
Okay.
I remember on the close up here, there was something I had to do. There was something where like the jacket wasn't looking right with him leaning forward.
Okay.
And I don't remember exactly what it was, if we had to clip it again or something. But I'm just like, letting them know that I am paying attention to all these details, and there's a reason for it, and I'm just trying to make sure that they look their best, and I look my best, at it. Everything works out
Look.
well and the photo's successful. So I think that's mostly what I'm working on a lot of times. And sometimes too, like when they bring their clothing, I'll even ask them like, "Oh, what is it that you brought today that you're really excited about, or that is there anything you, if I'm working with a model and it's a collaboration, I'll always make sure to say, is there anything you need or
Mhm.
anything you want to do, or what are you excited about today? Because maybe it's that they just got this dress and they really want to be photographed in this dress, and then you would totally not pick it.
Yeah.
But picking it and making sure they're involved in the collaboration too, um, is going to really motivate them, I think. So,
Okay. So let me dive into this particular example, because I think, well, there's few questions what I have. First, did you have like an idea with this photo shoot? Because it seems like everything is working together. The background, the suit, everything kind of comes together. So how did you plan this? Like this gentleman came in and he came in with the blue jacket or blue suit, and you just like, okay, this is what we're gonna do, or did you have that planned before? If you can share the secret.
well, if I no, it's more like, can I remember the secret? Well, maybe I'll just go with the important, not the important parts, but the
Hmm.
things that stick out. Um, so I know that he was getting dressed in this room or adjacent to the room where this wall existed,
Okay.
and it was in a studio that I was at in Atlanta while I was teaching a workshop. And I don't remember. Of course, I saw the wall, and maybe part of the background is we actually have a wall, an accent wall in our bedroom behind our headboard that is also these plastic tiles, not the
Okay.
exact style, but it's similar. And so I'm pretty sure, and we have these uplit lamps we have lamps on either side of the bed that have colored LEDs in them, that we can say, hey Google, turn on the bedroom lights, or make the
Yeah, yeah.
bedroom lights, yeah, magenta, and then they'll be magenta. But yeah, so I probably saw the suit. I didn't know that he was bringing it. I probably saw these black tiles, and then
Okay.
thought about the lights that we have in our bedroom, and how you can make the white wall in our bedroom look any color by just changing the lights, and you can make black pretty much look any color too, or at least not pure black, but like you can make this black plastic color any color by just shining light on it. So,
Yeah.
um, so I'm sure those two things were in there. Then this is pretty close to um, a tip. There's a headshot setup that I usually teach in my workshops that's pretty similar to this. So I'm sure that the two things are like, I'm sure that I just combined all of that together in order to create this setup.
Okay. Perfect.
And
So,
and just doing little things to care too, like making sure that I'm only lighting the background with the blue light and not getting too much of it onto him, even though I did a little bit. I believe in this one the the edge lights didn't fire, and that wasn't on purpose.
okay.
Um, Whereas later you see them firing, and it's edging him out there from the background. So just
Absolutely. And then like what is interesting, like when you look at the image itself, like the background looks unreal. Like it looks so cool. Like it's just been, I don't want to say planned before, but it's like really interesting. Well, it just kind of flows all together. That's what I'm trying to say.
oh cool.
Um,
Can you see it's black in that BTS three? I think it's the next one. I guess it doesn't. Oh yeah, there it is on the top.
okay, this one.
Maybe
Yeah, yeah.
you can see it's black. Yeah,
Yeah, it's black. Yeah, 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 yeah. I can see that. Yeah, perfect. So,
yeah, and now I see in that shot we also used a silver reflector, to make sure that we bounce light into his eyes, even though it's
yeah,
not in this BTS. I see it in the other. I see someone holding it in the other one, um,
here.
to fill in those shadows and
Yeah, for
just.
sure.
Mhm.
So my next question to you is, let's talk a little bit about the retouching process, because this is like a behind the scene picture, and you can see right away this is like really precisely lit, and it's like looks probably gonna it probably looks amazing straight from the camera. But tell me a little bit about your retouching process. Like how's this retouching process looks for you? Do you spend a lot of time retouching your images? or you try and do everything what you can best in the photo shoot itself, and then this is like you just do like a slightly adjustments in the retouching process, or are you putting a lot of work afterwards as well?
So my first stage in retouching has been right on set in the last, I
Yes.
mean, since I've been working with models, which is to make sure that they have makeup done in some way or another. Mostly what I'm doing with men is I'm using um, 5 different shades of powder, which is just simply something that's going to knock down the shine and even out their skin tone a little bit.
Okay.
Very simple, very quick application, but all that it's doing is just knocking down that shine, covering up dark circles a little bit, and just making it so that it doesn't have to be so much done in post. Then I have sort of been then the next thing would be the color grading part. So I'm using Lightroom most of the time to make
Okay.
sure to apply a film emulation look most of the time in these painted background sort of images. If I'm working on a white background or a brightly colored background, I'm probably not doing that. I'm just increasing the contrast most of the time. Um, then I'll be using some of the masking features in Capture One. Hopefully I said Capture One a second ago and not Lightroom, but I'm
Okay.
using that to like maybe just select their hair if their hair is black and elevating the detail in that hair. Or maybe I'm gonna have to select the background and bring it up a little bit or knock it down a little bit because I screwed that up. So it's just little things like that that I'm perfecting or fixing. And then once I get that done, maybe almost all the time I'm adding a vignette so that a radial mask layer so that I'm feathered at 100% and just making it so that everything around, this part of the person becomes a little darker. And
Yeah.
that way it just brings the eye back up to the face. And so that's probably one of the big things that I'm doing. Um, then for about the last year and a half, I've been using a combination of outsourcing to a retoucher and
Okay.
using a Voto, which is an AI retouching program.
Yes.
So my friend Simon, who is in Benin City, Nigeria, he reached out to me when I posted in my story looking for retoucher referrals, and he's been doing a lot of my retouching.
Hmm.
Um, if you search Simon Keys, you can probably find him. He just had to change his account name, so I'm not remembering it off the top of my
Okay.
head, but um, we could link to it maybe. But he's charging starting at $6 an image
Oh wow. Okay.
and doing what would take me to do in about an hour. Or, then I'll use a Voto. So for me, it's I'm looking at things from the point of view that um, if I have to take the photo into Photoshop after using a Voto, then I'm probably just going to send it to Simon straight away
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
because I'm going to end up spending too much time on the photo myself, and I'd rather just pay him the $6 to have him take care of it entirely, and then I'm not involved in it. So
Mhm.
if it were something like extending the background or fixing um, a problem where like the point of someone's collar ended up on top of their suit jacket, or um, anything where you had to like do a head swap or
Mhm.
something like that, I'm just going to straight up send it to
Send it out.
Simon. Yeah, and so it's probably about 2/3. It's probably half of the time on the model photos that I'll send it to him, and half the time I'll do it myself. When
Hmm.
I have client shoots, I will almost always send them just to him.
Okay.
Um, and that's partly to do with the idea that like it's might be bad to say, but it's like I don't be cautious in what I say. If it's an artistic picture that I did for me, then I really want it to be perfect for me. I may
Yes.
not have that same expectation um if it's not for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah, so mm, yeah,
I
so then I'll just send it to him and have him do it. And that's actually he it. it's part of um, he works for me 1 day a week doing admin
Okay.
tasks, and then part of that bonus of doing that work for me is getting the retouching work. So it's just sort of what we have worked out,
Yeah.
as well as making it easier on me because I'm not um, worried so much about
Yeah. So
little tiny things in the
little
output.
things. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's switch the gears a little bit and let's talk about the current state of photography. We talk a little bit prior we kick off this
Not
podcast, and we
photography if you use AI.
yes, I want to talk a little bit about AI because I know it's knocking on all the doors. People are some people are optimistic, some people are terrified. There is constant, I would say, battle, and people try to kind of share their own opinions, and sometimes they're so contradicting that there is no middle ground. So I want to talk about this with you, what because you are heavily involved in this industry. What's your take on what's happening right now with AI? And also, I would like to talk a little bit about maybe your predictions, which direction this whole thing is going. Should we be scared of this? Should we kind of approach this more from kind of point of view that this is going to be another tool for us? It's going to make our life easier. What's your thoughts on this?
Well, I love the quote that is something like, "You won't be replaced by AI, but you'll be replaced by someone who uses AI." And I
Yes,
think
that's
that's
a good one.
probably probably pretty true. Um, it was my friend's friend who said it, but I'm sure
Okay,
it came from
that's a
maybe he
really good.
originated.
Actually,
I
that's a
don't
really
know.
good one. I
Yeah.
really like that.
Yeah, so, there's, like, certain things that only we can do,
Mhm.
um, that they're like decisions we have to make and artistic decisions we have to
Yeah,
make, and so what if the robots do other work,
yeah.
that's just kind of busy work? It's like, I was talking to my friend who's a sports photographer, and we were talking about a new camera and some advancements that it had in the autofocus, and he was like, "Well, I guess I'll just use it and let it do the focusing for me."
Mhm.
And on because it has some AI mode about basketball, and I was just like saying like, "Well, you might as well." I mean, the point is though that like, let's say we're photographing baseball, for instance, to you go with that analogy.
Mhm.
Um, you know, the AI doesn't know that you're supposed to shoot the pitcher in the sixth or seventh inning when they leave the game when they're switching sides
Mhm.
because the starting pitcher may never come back again. So
Yeah.
that's something as a sports photographer you need to know because you need that reaction person of the person leaving the field. Or AI is not going to know who to shoot at the end of the game because that's something you have to know because
Yeah.
you know what's important editorially. And these are the decisions
Mhm.
you make and the things you bring to the table, which I'm sure is the same thing with stuff that we're doing. It's like
Yeah.
they're not going to know they as though they're people. The AI is not going to be able to make all the styling decisions and all the posing decisions and all of the lighting decisions that we're going to make because it's like all the things collectively that we know together that are going to work well together or work for that person or work in this situation. And
Mhm.
so we're really just ultimately using our knowledge and maybe using the AI tools as the worker bee or um, someone doing the busy work or figuring out some problem that you can't solve with the skills you have at the moment, but you know
Mhm.
the direction of where things are that you need to go. So I'm not sure what will happen in 5 or 10 years, but I know we
Mhm.
might as well keep using these tools
Learn from
and
them.
using them all to make our life better. So, for instance, with Evoto, yes, I could spend 45 minutes retouching the skin on someone's face, or I could spend 2 to 3 minutes adjusting a series of sliders and calling it a day
Yeah.
because that's going to look really good. And who's to say that after 45 minutes, I could exceed that level of work by hand?
Mhm.
Um, Far better for me just to do that in 3 minutes and spend 42 minutes using another bot to work on the SEO for my website
Yeah.
or some other problem I'm having. So um, it just gives us so many opportunities to work on other things and perfect our
Mhm.
work, or maybe use AI to make a background, as I did in some of those football photos you had pulled
Mhm.
up, or maybe in some of the photos you take. It's
Yeah.
like way more efficient for you to perhaps fake a football stadium at night on a foggy day than to wait around for a foggy day for you to get into a football stadium to
Yeah.
photograph it at night. So it's just going to make
Yeah.
things much more possible. Now it's our vision that matters,
Yeah.
not these little execution points.
Well, I think definitely is going to help us to overcome some of those, challenges, right? Like, even as you said, the background, you don't have to have access to stadium or whatever. You can kind of artificially create this, and looks fairly real, and then make this look interesting and save all the time on doing things, which, as we speak, also when it comes to the retouching, instead spending. And then I don't know how about you, but I remember my case, like I spent so much time retouching whenever I was getting some projects, like majority of my time working on the project was not even the photo shoot, it was the retouching process. And now you can just literally cut this off to from hours to minutes and get similar results. Well, they're good enough, for the client, and then we can focus on other stuff. um, but I agree with you,
Yeah.
like, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, even when I do the shoots for me that are mostly the content that people see me posting, I would spend half the day shooting it and half a day culling and color grading it. And
Hmm.
then if I edited that shoot myself, I would spend another day editing it. So, now I might send it to Simon and pay about $50 and not edit it and not spend the day editing it. Or I might use a voto. So it's like there are more things we can produce so much more just by letting go of all of
Yeah,
these
yeah, yeah,
things.
yeah.
I think I
100%.
was watch I
Yeah,
I
go
think I
ahead.
was watching a how to YouTube video by Marquez Brownlee, who's MKBHD on
Hmm.
YouTube, and he used the idea that like when you are starting off as a YouTuber, you're like an octopus who has 8 arms doing 8 different
Hmm.
things because you have to do all of these things. And then as you scale, you find you cut off an arm and give it to someone else
Yeah.
so that instead of you making the thumbnails, someone else is making the thumbnails. Instead of you doing the editing, someone else is doing the editing. It's like
Yeah.
the same thing with photography. We don't have to do all of these things by ourselves
Yeah.
because there's just so much more options now.
But don't you think, and this is something what I'm kind of repeating also to, other photographers, that you still need to understand the process, let's say retouching, right? Because we've retouched so much, we know how much time consuming, but we also, I think, have the more, how can I describe this? We pay attention to details. So even if we're using AI, we know exactly what we're going after because we've trained our eyes over the years retouching, manually, that we know exactly what the final results should look like. And I think also that a lot of photographers out there who go straight to AI, they don't understand the process. I have this, actually person lately who, they jump straight to AI, like, oh, but AI still makes flaws and they don't know how much they can push it. So what I'm trying to say is, photographers who actually are in this industry, they want to, I don't know, develop their own style, they want to kind of, I don't know, be successful, they need to understand the process. The process is how to make things work before they jump into AI. At least that's my opinion. um but I think, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely our lives getting easier. Yeah.
at least using it and having, I mean, knowing how to do it and having a level of taste. And it's whether you're using AI to do the retouching or outsourcing it. It's like
Mhm.
you still need to know like how much is too far,
Yeah.
and you still also need to know like um, do I make sure that you zoom into 100% and look at the floor to see that there isn't any dust on the floor or dirt on the floor
Yeah.
if their feet are in the shot,
Yeah.
or all of those little things. Or if there's a microfiber chair, maybe you need to go get the fingerprints out of it.
Yeah.
um, all these things that you just got to know from experience.
Absolutely. So I have a question regarding your education because you got involved very heavily in educating people. And what I want to ask you, how this education element impacts your photography? Because I remember, I can just share briefly my experience when I started educating people on headshots. I remember that was just like I started paying attention to even more details, because you not only have to understand what you're doing, but also you have to explain to somebody else in the like light language and an understandable kind of way, so they understand, what exactly you're talking about. And I think with the experience, a lot of those things becoming so obvious for us that we don't pay attention to those, right? And we just like, okay, why you don't understand this, and then educating people, you have to just kind of scale back to understand every element what you're doing and why you're doing. So tell me about your experience when you decided, okay, now I'm going to be teaching, or I'm going to try to help people, and how that impact your photography.
Yeah, so probably before I would, for instance, I would use a light meter half of the time to get things going or to record something that I thought worked really well. So I
Hmm.
would write down like what the settings, what the light meter readings are, not the settings. Well, I probably wrote down both actually. If it's something that worked out really well. Um, and I would use that to maybe reference later. When I started teaching people, I started teaching them with a light meter all of the time because I felt like I needed to give them something that was completely repeatable.
Hmm.
So if I said to you that my flash was at 1/8 power, it doesn't mean anything to you if you don't know the watt seconds of the flash, you don't know um, you don't have the exact model, you don't have the exact softbox, you don't have the exact skin tone, you don't have the exact room, and you don't know the exact distance. Whereas if I give you the light meter reading and I said that that light metered at 5.6 on the person's face, then you can easily take any modifier in any room and point it generally in the same way and turn it up till it meters at 5.6. So
Hmm.
that was probably the biggest change, was just sort of like memorizing what those formulas were that I was using a lot of the times, and using that tool in order to show people something that was totally something they could take away and use right away to get the same exact look. And so that was something. The other thing was probably um, Hmm. Well, on a personal level, I had to get used to failing in front of people. So at
Okay.
first, I was like, I don't know that I don't want to look stupid. I don't want to experiment. I don't want to try something outside of the box because then I'm going to potentially just look like I don't know what I'm talking about. But then I realized over time, it's like, no, like me solving a problem that I'm having is more educational because they're going to have to solve problems and get through these things too. So a lot of times in my 2-day workshop, what I do is I have people bring photos that they like, that they want to
Okay.
recreate, that they want to learn the lighting for, and we go through and figure it out together.
Oh, nice.
And and that took a while for me to be comfortable with that idea that, here we are, we're going to try something and hopefully I figure it out. Um, so that changed a lot too. Um, but probably more so like um, I'm trying to separate how doing the workshops changed the way that I do the workshops
Hmm.
and the way that I make things digestible for people to learn with how doing the workshops changed um, what I do. Um, Part of it's probably too like because I'm often teaching the same, let's say in my 1-day workshops, I'm probably teaching the same 10 or so different setups. And
Hmm.
maybe I'm teaching 5 of them that day based on what the model looks like or what the model has or what the room looks like or
Hmm.
whatever the variables are. Um, and as I keep doing those same things over and over again, I start realizing the nuances of things. So I'm probably even more instinctively like placing the lighting more precisely just from having done it time and time and time again. And one of the things that always irks me sometimes is seeing a kicker on the side of someone's nose. So, so if the light is back here, it's probably not going to hit my nose, but if I turn my head that way, it might. Or if the light's over here, it's going to hit the side of my nose. And so it's even like just learning different face structures, because
Yeah.
I've done the same setup on so many different people. It's like I know kind of where that light can
Yeah.
be and where it's going to hit their nose, or even learned the idea that if I stand where the light is and look at the person, I know where the light's going. That's something I probably didn't think until I kept teaching these workshops, and I had to explain that concept of where that kicker would be.
Yeah.
Um, on another workshop, somebody asked me like, uh, "How does a beauty dish actually work, and where am I supposed to put it uh, in relation to their face?" And I'm just standing there going like, "Well, I always heard that the diameter is the distance, so let's do that." And then I'm realizing like, well, that's not really an accurate answer. Just repeating whatever I said, I don't know that it's true.
Yeah.
So a lot of things in the workshops might spur me to do experiments to learn that, or things that I'm doing for YouTube might spur me to learn that. So that was something very specific. So I ended up with all four beauty dishes that Ellen Chrome makes. And someone asked me, like, how does a beauty dish work one day in a workshop? And I kind of realized, like, oh, if I take a beauty dish and I put it, so if this is the beauty dish, and I place it perpendicular to a black flag or just a piece of black foam board,
Hmm.
I can then take a picture of it from your angle because the light's pointed this way, going that way. Um, this will cause me to be able to record the pattern of light coming out of the beauty dish because the card is right up the middle of the beauty dish. And then I was like, oh, well, now I can see why people say um, diameter equals distance, because you could see that there was lines of light coming off the edge of the beauty dish. Um, wish I had the hands to go the other direction.
Yeah.
Like it came off the top of the dish like this, if we're still looking at it perpendicular, and it came off this way, and the two lines met around where the diameter was of the beauty dish. So if it was 24 inches across, about 24 inches out would be that part where all those lines converged. So that was why people said diameter equals distance, but I didn't really fully understand the reason why. So
Yeah.
then that led to me figuring out that method and then experimenting and trying different faces with different distances and seeing what looked good
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
that's another thing that I think I love the most out of um, this process, whether it's teaching in person or teaching on YouTube. It's just um, having to question all of the things that I thought I knew or had been told to make sure that they're true before I tell someone else about it.
Yeah.
And then I'm always learning through that process, even if it's just little things.
Yeah. And I also think, because we've done it this so many times, like we've got countless sessions, right? And you just, as you said, you see things before you even, before you even take a shot, right? So, and, I think it's so easy for us to, like, I've seen that many times, like, on my workshops where I put some lighting, here, 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 and then you're like, boom, and you get the shot, and they're like, kind of looks easy, but then when they're doing it, they're just guessing, right? Like we know exactly where this lighting's supposed to be because we've done so many mistakes in the past that we know what works, what doesn't. And I think for people who are learning, a lot of those things are just simply trying out. And then we've done this in the past, right? Because that was also our process to get where we are right now. But I 100% agree with you. Like, when we do things, looks easy, but then when people have to do it themselves, all of a sudden everything is it changes the game, and they're not getting exactly what they're looking for sometimes. um yeah, that's interesting and a valid point. And I think we all kind of see that, right? So let's talk a little about business. That's usually I leaving at the end, because being in the photography business nowadays, we both know it's a challenging. We have to pull all sorts of different strings to make this work. um, so how this whole thing works for you? Like, I have actually a couple of questions. First of all, how you promote yourself, like what do you think is, and again, I want to say, kind of golden recipe for being successful and then monetize everything, what do we do? but what's are the most important elements for you to make your business successful? And getting out there, it's the social media, it's the paying ads, it's I don't know, word of mouth, I don't know, being close with certain clientele to kind of keep them coming back. How this whole thing works for you in your business?
The times that I've ran paid ads on Facebook and Google, I don't think they really paid much of a return.
Okay.
And maybe particularly the Google example might have been because I didn't have enough Google reviews.
Okay.
And so that's something that I've probably worked in more to prioritize to make sure that I get Google and Yelp reviews from clients. So I started using 17 Hats earlier this year. Um, I think in March. And the one of the things that I developed in there is they have these workflows that you can build so that every step of your process is on a checklist,
Hmm.
basically. And it will prompt you to do the next item on the list in the workflow that you create for that thing. So I have like one that's for fulfillment of headshots. So
Okay.
step one is John uploads the gallery. Step two is
Mhm.
Simon prepares the gallery. Step three is Simon um, sends the gallery with the right prescripted email.
Mhm.
Step four is if they haven't responded back in a few days, Simon reaches out to them. All of these things are scripted, but even down to the end, which is I deliver the photos. Let's say that's step nine, and then the finals. And step 10 is a email automatically goes out and says, "Hey, how did we do?" And question two is, or question one, it might be question one. It's rate us on a scale of 1 to 10. And if they respond 8 or higher, they get prompted to leave us a review. If they
Okay.
score a 7 or lower, they get asked a
Okay.
question as to how we screwed up.
Yeah.
So they don't even get asked to review us until we know that it's going to go well.
Go well.
Um, so that's one thing that I've implemented lately to make sure that I get those reviews. When I did run the Google ads, and a couple of my headshot photographer friends swore by them for headshots, and I actually was doing it the same way they were saying to do it. Um, it I don't know that it even broke even, but what I did see was all the things people searched for, which then changed my perspective, because we might have ideas of what people are searching for when they're looking
Yeah.
for us, but when you can see the actual data of how they ended up on your ad and all those things they were searching for, then that gives you an idea for how you could make a blog post. So
Hmm.
also this year I started using the paid version of ChatGPT and building my own custom bots. And basically what you do is you use the bot they've already created, but you're customizing it with information about your businesses and a set of
Hmm.
rules that you would like it to follow so that it does a process that you're programming it to do. So in this instance, it was to write blog posts for SEO. So I told it all the things it needed to know in order to make them formatted for my WordPress blog. Um, all the things it needed to know about SEO based on the guides that the SEO plugin that I'm using gave me, which is like how to use the focus key phrase, how often to use it, where to use it, all of those things. Um, and then I took those searches from the Google ads and I started asking the bot to target those search phrases with a set of pictures that I had from a client photo shoot.
Hmm.
So then on my website, if you go to johngress.com and click on info and then come down to updates, what you will see there are all blog posts written by this custom bot in order to target particular search terms. And so
Hmm.
rather than pay Google to send me customers, I started using this in order to get those people to come to me for free.
Yeah.
So since implementing this, I saw that last I checked, it was like 25 of the top 100 most visited pages on my site
Oh wow.
were AI written blog posts,
Hmm.
and I felt an uptake in bookings. So that is good too. Um, the other thing I think is really important for those bookings is online scheduling. If we're talking about
I've heard that. Yeah.
um, those, what'd you say?
No, I've heard that there's like apparently huge increase when people can book you right there.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
they're gonna do this more. Well, they'll probably book. There's a higher chances that they're gonna get the bookings, right? They don't want to call you. They don't want to send you an email. They don't want to search for anything. They want to make the bookings and they want to move on, right? So I've
And I
heard
don't
this.
want to talk to them either, so it's
Yeah,
perfect.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like I don't want to have a back and forth with someone. I just want my phone to tell me I have an appointment on Tuesday
Yes.
at 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
Um,
100%.
yes. Yeah. So I started using Acuity scheduling a few years ago. And then when
Hmm.
I started using 17 Hats, I started using 17 Hat scheduling. But in both instances, you give it office hours and you tell it to sync with your Google Calendar.
Yeah.
And whatever is in your Google Calendar that you put blocks off time on the booking calendar. So you
Mhm.
can't get, if you have a doctor's appointment and you put it in your Google Calendar, it won't book a session for you
Yes.
during that
Also,
time.
it's
It
like
will
a
keep it from
call.
doing that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not like you have to do any extra work to make sure that it's
Mhm.
updated all the time. You just use a different calendar essentially for that. So that has made things a lot easier too. When I started using 17 Hats, though, I actually was at WPPI and I went to one of the sessions with the 17 Hats CEO, and
Mhm.
she was talking about lead capture forms, which sounds very not fun. But you're like, what the hell is that? Um, so what she was saying was make this form for your contact page. And if you go to my page and click on contact, you'd see it. Um, it it asks about 5 questions, and one of them is like who you are, where you work, how do I contact you, that sort of stuff. But then the
Mhm.
important one is what do you want? So if there are 7 options. So if you want business headshots, if you want to do an event photo shoot, and if you want to do an advertising photo shoot, those all cause you to get a different questionnaire in your email box automatically when you hit submit.
Okay.
If you said that you wanted modeling headshots, it will automatically send you an email with a summary of my modeling headshot packages and a link to the booking page. The same thing for acting and business headshots. So yeah,
Mhm.
so there's those. Oh, and then there's like group business headshots, something like that. So anyway, so in that context, each one of those drop downs spurs another automatic thing that happens. And I'm either getting the information that I need to send them a quote, or I'm getting them to the page where they need to book.
Mhm.
And also in that email, because this person might be high touch, even though I'm sending them to the booking page, if that's appropriate for what they want, it
Mhm.
also gives them the option to book a Zoom session if they want to talk about it first.
Okay.
Um, which I had to argue with my AI bot several times because it's like, and you can come by the studio to do a consultation. I'm like, no, I do not want someone just walking in. Like,
Yeah,
quit
yeah.
giving out the address. I programmed it, but at first it was like trying to give out the address. It was encouraging people to stop by, and I was just like, no, I don't
I know
want
that.
that.
Yeah.
Just yeah, just tell them that they can fill out the form and they can then book a Zoom if they want. But
Yes.
yeah, so that's mostly how I've been doing everything just to keep things easier. The other thing is too, in 17 hats, I start off a onboarding workflow for those more involved commercial shoots, and in there will be that they're gonna get their contract. I'm gonna get the information to make the quote. I'm gonna make the quote, and the quote, the contract, and the invoice are all bundled together.
Okay.
So so as soon as they get the quote, and I learned this from another photographer, um, don't negotiate your skills, don't negotiate your prices down, remove and add things for them to choose from.
Mhm.
So so don't just all of a sudden you come up with an idea that the job is 12,000 and they say they have 10,000. Don't just say okay, make them take stuff off.
Mhm.
So in this quote thing, they can untick things. They
Yeah.
can change it so that they don't want same image delivery. Well, that's on their event, that's 250 less. So that will save them money. If
Yeah.
they don't want retouching on their headshot shoot, that and they just want the photos out of the camera, that saves them money. If they want to trim the time, that will save them money. They can select those things, And
Hmm.
then that information, once they hit accept, will automatically carry over to the contract.
Hmm.
And so then the
Oh,
contract will then tell them that they have to make a 50% deposit. Let's say if it's like a advertising shoot, or I'm doing photos at your office for the day.
hmm.
Well, as soon as they sign it, they get an invoice for that 50%. So it's
Hmm.
like very, very automated and
Yeah.
simple. They can pay with a credit card or a bank transfer, or there are probably more
So
options,
you
but
make it
yeah.
everything as easy as possible, so there's no kind of fighting back and forth and all this stuff. But I want to go back for a second to the pricing. Actually, I talked recently. I'm sure you know this photographer out of New York, Danny Diamond. And
Okay.
the one thing what he told me, which was kind of like interesting, he's like, I never say a fixed price. Like I always give the range. Like that's what you exactly. This kind of the same scenario, because if you tell someone fixed price, you automatically you might be, they have some number in their head, and then if you tell them the price is off, you automatically kind of, I don't want to say they cancel you, but there's less chances they're going to hire you. But if you tell them like, okay,
Okay.
this is the price from, let's say, for example, the headshot session from $500 to $1,000, then the way they think is like, okay, I can play with it. I can just, I don't know, figure out how to make this work, or I can take something off the table, or I can adjust this, right? And he says this is the best way to approach when it comes to talking about the pricing, because that's what a lot of photographers get problems with. And then you probably also know that as soon as the conversation hits the moment we talk about the money, everybody starts feeling uncomfortable, right? Because you want to get the client, but you don't know how to approach this. So especially if you don't know what their budget is, right? You try to navigate it to somehow fit into that budget. But the best way to do it is never tell them the fixed price. It's just like give them the range, and then we can talk more, because that also opens the further conversation about how we can make this work. And I thought it was really clever, especially for the situations we're dealing most of the time, that people coming to you and the first thing what they ask is like how much, right? Like that's the main objective. It's like I know sometimes people they know you, they know what to expect, the price doesn't matter, but that's the different conversation. But especially for those new potential clients, we need to know also how to navigate this difficult conversation about money, because that's usually can either push the conversation further or just cut it off right on the spot, right? So
I think I felt more lately like, um, here are all your options. These are the prices. And whatever you want to, great. You don't, great. And maybe
yeah.
that just comes from being old and annoyed. I don't know. Um,
Yeah.
but,
Yeah, but
but
we're going through a lot of, I think, I don't know how you feel about it, but like it's kind of frustrating for us, right? Sometimes that people coming to you, and the first thing they ask it's money, right? And I get we're living in a tough times. Everyone is counting every penny, but at the same time, how to kind of navigate this conversation that we can discuss this further deeper, why they came to you, why they want it, what they want, what they're looking for, right? How we can help them, how we can serve them. And that's, I think, when you tell them straight ahead the fixed price, you're just shutting the door sometimes, right? And then maybe they have the budget. Maybe, if they see the value, if you can, I don't want to say convince them, but I actually explain to them how this process look like, what they're getting, what they're benefiting from it. There might be um, changing the entire conversation. And I think the skill of not negotiations is also another like a extremely important element to be successful. And then I'm sure, I don't know how you feel about it, but there's a lot of photographers out there who do amazing work, but when it comes to the business they're failing, right? And that's the biggest issue nowadays too, right? That they have the skills, they have the knowledge, they produce amazing work. It's how they can sell the stuff what they're producing. That's the biggest challenge.
I think for me, it was kind of a transition of like uncertainty about whether I was asking for too much or not enough, or it's like you throw out a price and the client says yes too quickly, and then you're like, oh shit, like um
Yeah, I had that
I
so
should
many
have
times.
asked for more.
Yeah, especially
Yeah.
in the wedding industry, like, sometimes you told them the price and they're like, "Oh my God, that's expensive." And then sometimes you just like, "Oh, our budget was like double of this." I'm just like, "Oh."
Yeah,
But
and then
then,
you're just sort of like, then you're on the other side if you're like, did I ask for too much? Now they're not gonna ask me. Maybe I should have asked for half of that or
yeah.
something like that. And I I think I just got more comfortable in talking to other photographers about what I'm sorry, talking to other photographers made me feel more comfortable
Mhm.
with one charging more than I was charging. Um, but also just sort of getting to that point where like um you know, just getting to the idea or getting more comfortable with the idea that yes, sometimes people are not going to come to you and sometimes they are.
Mhm.
And if they
Totally.
do, great. And if they don't, they don't. And that's just how it's going to be. Like, it's probably more likely than not that someone's coming to you. Let's say your service is $500. No one's going to come to you and like your work with a budget of $300 probably and totally walk away. They're probably
Mhm.
going to come up with a way to get the $200. But if they came to you with a budget of $100, yeah, they're going to walk away. But you don't want that person anyway,
Yeah.
because because what are you going to do for the $100? So it's and then I guess on the other hand, like speaking of the headshot pricing, I um, came up with 4 packages for yes, this is true. I have
Mhm.
different package structures for business headshots and modeling headshots.
Mhm.
So, um, yeah, so it's like quick and dirty, more involved, and then like really elaborate. So I just feel like they're going to pick whichever one matches their budget, and and they're going to spend the money with you.
Mhm.
Um, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. The other evolution that I had too was that on the commercial side of things, I would sort of play, like it was a game of roulette. Like, how much do I want to charge today?
Mhm.
Like, do I feel like I can get 10 grand out of this advertising shoot or three? And
Yeah.
it's like, so now it's just sort of like, especially with using 17 hats and trying to set things up more so that I could scale or work with someone else or automatically respond to leads. That was the thing too, is that I probably had instances where someone would email me inquiring about a job, and I might take 3 days to see that they'd asked me that because
Mhm.
I was so focused on doing this other thing that I was doing at the time. And I didn't notice their email. And I kept telling myself, oh, I need to check my email. I need to check my email. And I forget. Um, now just setting up that structure in 17 hats and then automatically having it ask them all the questions. Well, the next step of that was standardizing my pricing so that I could just quickly send out that form to them without me having to think what is my made up price today, or having that uncomfortable conversation with somebody. I already had every communication point scripted, and
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
all ready to go. It's already programmed in there. So as soon as I um, tick a box, it might go. Or as soon as I click on this button that says review, it just pops up the email that I've already scripted, and I just glance at it and hit send. So it's
Mhm.
not like I'm spending a lot of time. And that's sort of, I guess it's sort of liberating in a way that once you sort of like just lay down, like, this is what I charge for stuff, then I don't know, I just feel less nervous about stuff like that too.
Yeah. Absolutely. Perfect. We've passed an hour, so I'm not gonna drag you more. But what I would
It's
like
because
to
I
say,
drug you along on all my long
no, no,
answers.
no, 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 no. I would love to come back to this conversation. And at some point, I would like to kind of get back and do this again. I had absolutely pleasure chatting with you. As I mentioned, we could probably talk for another 10 hours. I don't think that would be a problem at all. We both, I think, passionate about photography. that this is our lives, and I feel that through you, through your work, and I think also we dedicated like literally every piece of ourselves to this passion or business. We can look at it different ways.
Well,
um
if you come down to Imaging USA or WPPI, I'll be there.
yeah, absolutely. And then maybe we can have a chance to have a beer or something instead of just running
Sounds
to
good to
each
me.
other into
Yeah.
hallway and talk for like couple of seconds. So do you do those events regularly or once in a while? Like, how this whole thing looks like for you, because it seems like you've
I
been heavily involved there as well, right?
I think this is my sixth year in a row speaking at
Oh, wow.
WPPI. The first year I actively had COVID while teaching my class.
Oh, wow.
So
Wow.
yeah, that
Yeah.
was kind of funny
For
because
me, it
it
was
was
interesting because the one I attended, they invited me to talk about headshots. That was actually end of the COVID, and then
okay.
and it was like that was just, well, the event was amazing, but for me to get there, like I never shared that story, but I had to do like, I don't know, 6 tests within 4 days. And then,
Wow.
before I went there, I have to do the one test. Then, they caught me on the border. I have to do another test. Then I went there. I had to do tests there so I could come back within like, a few days. And then I got stuck in Toronto. So they were testing me like literally like twice. Then I came to Calgary, and then they caught me on, whatever the exit. And they randomly, were picking people for testing, and I got picked again. And I'm just like, how many times do you guys want me to be tested? And I was just like, this is just insanity. And Canada, I don't know how states, but Canada, when it comes to COVID, yeah, it was pretty rough. There was no
Well,
mercy. They were really testing everybody. The restrictions were insane. But yeah, but it
I
was worth to go. I enjoyed the event. I had fantastic time. I wish I could spend more time with other photographers. That was one thing which I don't know. I couldn't, because that was my first time. So also for me, it was a learning process. But I wish I could spend more time with other photographers and interact and talk, and then just I don't know, just enjoy the community more.
yeah, that's the definitely the best reason to go to those conferences,
Yeah.
aside from coming to our classes. But yeah,
Yeah, well,
yeah,
those are fun
that
too, right?
that
I think I went and I attend a lot of them. So I didn't go to yours, by the way. I'm sorry, but I think they're just like overlapping sometimes. But yeah, there's huge, how I can say it, educational push for a lot of people who are coming there to just talk and hear, and then just interact, and then be part of those presentations, because it looks for me like everyone was putting heart into this. You can really see like
yeah,
everyone who
definitely.
was presenting there, they were doing everything beyond and above to just share their knowledge, their experience, what they do. That's yeah, yeah, I could feel it on every presentation I've attended.
And to clean up what I was saying, I taught my first class at WPBI on February 26th of 2020 while
Okay.
I had COVID, and no
Oh,
one
wow.
was supposed to have COVID yet.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. That was crazy time. How that whole thing affects your business and everything? Because I don't know, like in Canada, we were shut down for like 2 years, like literally. Nobody knows what the hell is going on and which direction even this whole thing going, right?
I think through all the government assistance, I ended up sort of breaking, being whole again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but it did let me focus on maybe trying to grow my YouTube channel, which I never
Okay.
really tried YouTube before
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that period of time. I mean, I did a little bit, but I wasn't like consistently making videos and stuff. Um, However, the one thing that the biggest negative was I felt like I was starting to get really good at directing people,
Okay.
and now I like step all over my words constantly
Yeah, yeah,
and mix things up. So
yeah,
those months of not shooting, that affected my speech,
yeah.
my communication. But as a little side tip, I learned when I went to the dentist one day, he was telling me what to do from my perspective.
Okay.
And so now I've memorized in my head that when I'm talking to a subject, I give it from their perspective.
Wow. Okay.
So yesterday, I was shooting a marathon for a charity, and someone was helping me spot the runners from my charity team that I was shooting. And I kept referring to our right as the left
Okay.
because it was the subject's left. and, and that's when I knew that this had really taken effect to this idea.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yeah.
That was pleasure chatting with you. I will link everything to this podcast. I again highly recommend everyone who's watching this to attend your workshops. You sharing all amazing knowledge, and I think everyone who wants to take their photography to another level, they should attend it. They should be part of it, and then I'm sure they will learn tons from you. And I'm looking forward to another one. I will reach out to you in a while, and then we will come back to our conversation, see how this AI is gonna kind of slowly killing us. Little wink, but let's see how this whole thing unfolds in the next several months, years, and then see where the direction is. But I think it's gonna be massive disruption, and then hopefully we can take advantage of it for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's already made me twice as productive, so I'm not going to complain.
Yes, yes. Let's focus on that. Okay, John. Thank you chatting
All
with
right. See
you,
you later.
and we will be in touch.
All right. Take care.